Okay. So like 6 years ago, I was helping somebody clean out their garage, and there was a box just full of cameras. And at the time, I didn't know anything, but I knew that I didn't want to throw it in the garbage can. And so they just gave it to me. And that is where I got my very first film camera. And along with this film camera, he gave me some other lenses. This one's a 28 and this one's a 50. Both prime lenses. They're relatively sharp for how old they are, and I love shooting on them because they're really fast, meaning the aperture opens up really wide and you can get really nice blurry bokeh. I bought this little adapter for like 15 bucks on Amazon one time. It's essentially just this chunk of metal that you can connect this lens to. And that will then connect to my Sony camera, which I'm shooting on right now. The thing is, when I shoot on these, I have no autofocus. And so I'm shooting with a razor thin focus plane and no autofocus. And so even if I have peaking turned on my camera, I have to check like every single time I take a photo, and like 90% of the time it's soft focus or just completely out of focus. So they're definitely not good for video, and they also wouldn't be good for astrophotography if I want to do that because of something called chromatic aberration. Essentially what that is that different wavelengths of light focus at different planes. So red, blue, and green all focus at different focal distances. So what happens is you take a picture and the red and the green are in focus, but the blue is out of focus. So you get this like fringing around a person or around the subject. And that's really just the blue all being out of focus on that. More modern lenses have corrected that, but these old ones are pretty bad with chromatic aberration. And if I'm going to take pictures of the stars and they're just these tiny little pinpricks, having any chromatic aberration there is gonna be really bad because it's just gonna cause the whole thing to be blurry. So I just picked up the new lens that Sony came out with. That's a 20mm f1.8 prime lens, and I'm very excited to try it out. So there are a couple things right off the bat that I like about this 20mm lens. First of all, it's a really wide angle of view, but it doesn't have like a bubbled glass on the front like some wider lenses do. And that's really nice because I can now put on this UV filter just right on the top of it. It also means I can use a normal lens cap that can just go straight on top of this, and it's not gonna be a huge chunky thing that's gonna be taking up space in my bag or in my pocket. It comes with this aperture ring, which is really nice because you can have tactile control over that. And I think it's gonna be really, really great for astrophotography. It's gonna perform super well in low light. I love that it has autofocus when my other prime lenses don't. And I think it's gonna be really good for filming myself and for vlogging. The one thing I'm a little nervous about is that it doesn't have any stabilization built into the lens. So I'm hoping that my A7 III has enough internal stabilization to counter that, but we shall see. Another thing that's really great about this is how small it is. It feels tiny compared to the other lens I have. And I think if I put it on this bad boy, it will look so smooth because with a wider lens, you're not gonna get as much shake anyway. And then you put it on a stabilizer and it should be super, super smooth. So this lens does better in low light and has a wider viewing angle, which I'll show you by swapping out the lens right now. We're currently at 24mm f4, which is the widest and most open this current lens can go. And if I switch without changing any settings, watch what happens. Ready? So this is the now 20mm 1.8 that we have on this new lens. And obviously 1.8 isn't probably where I would want to be for this, especially because it's so bright. I would stop it down to like maybe 2.8. That should be a little bit better. I can't see because of my current setup. So that's just some immediate comparison. I'm thinking that we should take this out. We should go to southern Utah and we should take some pictures of the stars and we should vlog a little bit and see how well this performs. We are driving to a place in southern Utah called Escalante. Court graduated, so we came down and we're staying in this fancy yurt. So this is where we'll be for the next 2 nights. So we're gonna do some hiking. Do you have a word of advice for the world now that you're a smart graduate?
Don't plagiarize, especially in your freshman year.
There's like a living room, dining room, there's a kitchen, and a nice loft up here. There's a bathroom, and there's 2 bedrooms. Look at this place.
I'm Joanne, and I'm Cordy's mom, and it's his graduation and Daniel's graduation. Woo!
Yes. Go Utes, nice shirt.
Yes.
And a
I'm
pounder.
wearing the must.
And a
tonight.
pounder.
What?
Knuckles.
Knuckles.
Yeah, there it is. Okay, I'm pretty out of breath because I just climbed this hill behind me. Our yurt is like right down here. and I'm trying to scout out where I want to set the camera up tonight. And right now there's telephone wires and a hill and some trees. So I'm just trying to figure out, I know the Milky Way is going to come from this direction, but I'm trying to figure out where I want to put the camera. Also, so far, I'm really liking this lens that I can I'm holding it much closer to my face than I normally would with my 24mm. It's not too wide that it distorts things super crazy. Some of the wider lenses that are 12 or 16mm will kind of distort your face and make your nose look all huge. But this is a nice medium size where I don't feel like I'm being distorted. Sorry, I'm way out of breath. Whew. Update the vlog for us.
Very good food.
What do you got?
I brought.
What do you got?
Same thing. I ate my pizza already.
Did you eat?
I have a pizza. Brought lots of pasta salad, some tasty taters.
Little flatbread pizzas.
Oh, got a vegetarian in the house.
We're in Peekaboo Canyon right now, and it is Peekaboo Canyon because it's really hard to find.
Peekaboo, we found it.
We found it. It's a tight squeeze. Lunchtime.
Yes.
It's not only are you climbing in a narrow thing that's winding this way, but it's also dropping down. Oh, careful. I feel like you could break your ankle at any given moment. There's no graceful way to do this. It's just awkward all the way through. Unless you're me, you just do anything graceful like that.
That's nice, yeah.
I was kind of crushing it, but not to brag. Okay, PSA, if you ever come to these, do not write on these walls like these idiots.
We're doing a music video.
Marley thinks this is a great spot for a music video.
You ready?
Yeah, let's see what you
It's
got.
my new single.
Okay, let's go.
Cut my life into pieces. This is my last resort. Suffocation. No.
I almost ravaged them in Settlers of Catan, which I've never played before till now. And now we are gonna have a nice little bonfire. Also, from all the places that I scouted out where I should set the camera up for the stars, the best place to put the camera was right outside the door. So I ended up not having to go anywhere.
Cap?
We just woke up and I was reviewing some of the pictures that I got last night, and I realized I want to give you just a super quick astrophotography lesson. So the moon cycles between a full moon and a new moon. The full moon is when it is obviously full, and it's also in the sky all night long. So it rises as the sun sets and sets as the sun rises. And the new moon is the reverse of that. So you can't see it. You're seeing the dark side of the moon, and it's setting with the sun and rising with the sun, meaning that the whole night there is no moon. When you're trying to get photos of the stars, you usually want to take photos when you're closer to a new moon. This is because when the moon is in the sky, it's surprisingly bright, and it blocks out a lot of the stars that you would be able to see otherwise. Sometimes you'll want some moon up to light up a foreground if you have mountains that you want seen. Usually that's still such a small amount of light from the moon that you want, so you still want it toward the new moon phase. These last 2 nights I've been taking these photos, the moon is actually more toward the full moon phase. There's this really small gap that you can see in this time lapse where the moon is up and it's super bright, and then it gets dark for just a second, and then the sun starts illuminating the sky, so you lose all of the stars that you were able to see a second ago. So it's this narrow gap I had to wake up for. But even with that, I only got 3 seconds of the Milky Way moving, and you can't even see it move that much. So for photography, that's fine because you only need 30 minutes or so to grab a couple photos. But for a time lapse, the Milky Way isn't gonna move very far in that short amount of time. And so it's not gonna look as grand. One other thing to think about as you're shooting astrophotography is that when you're looking up at the stars, they're moving, right? And so if you have ever looked through a telescope, you'll know that you find the star that you're looking for, and then almost immediately it leaves your frame and you can't find it anymore. And that's because you're so far zoomed in that it makes it look like the stars are moving way faster. So the more zoomed in you are, the faster they're gonna be moving through that lens. And the wider angle lens you have, the slower moving they're gonna be. So that means that you can leave your shutter open for longer to gather more light without the stars blurring. So that's why this 20mm is nice, because it's wider than my 24, meaning that I can leave it open for 25 seconds. The reason I know I can leave it open for 25 seconds is because of something called the 500 rule. The 500 rule is that you take the number 500 and divide it by your focal length. So 500 divided by 20 is 25. And 25, the remaining number that you get, is the seconds that you can leave your shutter open without the stars blurring. I've shot before on a 16mm, which means that I can leave it open for 30 seconds and I won't get any blur of the stars, and you get more light coming in. So I think I'm gonna do a full astrophotography video, but for now, this lens is doing great. Oh, my legs. How was the trip?
It was right.
It was all right.
Yeah.
We do a little photo shoot.
Oh, heck yeah. Oh,
Gonna
heck
model
yeah.
these.
Dude, it matches your shirt.
Yeah.
And by matches, it clashes, is what I mean. That's it for the trip, and now we're ready to go home. Okay, we had a great weekend. It was like a short and sweet little graduation party. I thought for sure I would put on my 24-105 f4, and I ended up leaving this on the entire time. Although I didn't end up taking this on our hikes just because it was like too much to carry and I could just film it on my phone. So I ended up not using my stabilizer at all, but I think just handheld was actually pretty good. Like, it's kind of shaky, but it's wide enough that it's passable for me. And actually a bonus with the handheld, that this is a small thing and doesn't really matter, but actually I was closer enough to the microphone that it made a difference and it actually sounded better, and I had to turn the volume down on my camera because if I'm closer like this, I'm dramatically louder than if I'm just standing back right here. So that's kind of a bonus of having the wide lens and having the camera closer to you if you have the shotgun mic on top of your camera. One thing that I was also really impressed with is the minimum focus distance. It was really, really close. I think I could probably be like this close to the lens. I'm right now, I don't know, this far from the lens. And so you can get really tight shots, even though it's a wide lens, that look really good. So it's really versatile, even though you're at a fixed 20mm. I was actually really impressed with how well it does in low light. Having the 1.8 made it so that I could film much later than I would be able to normally. I could even get into blue hour, which I usually can't do on my 24-105 f4. I did, however, get back and decide to throw it on the stabilizer and go around Salt Lake a little bit. So I'm gonna close out this video of this lens on this camera with the stabilizer just going around the city. Enjoy these last couple shots. I hope that this was helpful and informative. And if you're looking into buying one of these lenses, let me know if this helped and if you have any other questions about it.